Peace be upon you. So once someone asked me the following question. They said, what is a science that is profoundly useful for humanity but has no usefulness for God? And before giving the answer to that question, let's contemplate that God knows absolutely everything. In Surah 10, verse 61, it says, you do not get into any situation, nor do you recite any Quran, nor do you do anything without us being witnesses thereof, as you do it. Not even an atom's weight is out of your Lord's control, be it in the heavens or the earth, nor is there anything smaller than an atom or larger that is not recorded in a profound record. Not only does God know everything that happens, but he knows about it even before it happens. In Surah 57, verse 22, it says, anything that happens on earth or to you has already been recorded even before the creation. This is easy for God to do. And again, in Surah 16, verse 1, we see the same sentiment. It reads, God's command has already been issued, and everything has already been written, so do not rush it, be he glorified, the Most High, far above any idols they set up. And before going further, let's discuss most people's initial question when this is brought up. And the question is, if God knows the outcome, are we truly free to choose? The answer lies in understanding that knowledge of the outcome does not negate the freedom of choice. Just because the end is known doesn't mean the process of arriving at that end is any less real or meaningful. Consider it like solving a riddle. And the individual who presents the riddle knows the answer, and they know the process one needs to take to reach that answer. It doesn't make solving that riddle any less fulfilling, just because the individual who presented the problem happens to know the answer. So in a fundamental sense, the purpose of this world is for us to see for ourselves why we made the choices we did to lead us to our final destiny. It's an ability for us to understand this process we went through and why this process took us to where we end up. Take the story of Satan and Adam as an example. God knew from the outset that both of them had this inherent flaw, and he created the conditions for those two individuals to be able to see for themselves their inherent flaw. And the purpose of this was so when it's brought out, when they can see for themselves what is hidden deep inside within their hearts, that they have the ability to make a choice. And in the case of Satan, Satan's choice was to double down on his disbelief and rebellion. He was willing to go to hell in order for him to attempt to prove his point. Adam, by contrast, recognized his failure and sought redemption. Now, God already knew these choices, but he didn't force them. Instead, out of his mercy, he allowed these processes to unfold so each individual can see for themselves why they made the decision they did. In the case of Satan, he immediately realized that yes, he's rebelling, and rather than seeking God's forgiveness, repenting, changing, his heart became hardened, and he persisted in his defiance. Adam, on the other hand, once he realized that, okay, hey, he has this deficiency, God created this scenario, told him not to approach this tree, he couldn't help himself, so then he was able to witness for himself his deficiency. And because God knew that he wanted to be redeemed, he wanted to be rehabilitated, he allowed him to go back to earth, and he gave him words by which he can redeem himself. So rather than condemning Satan immediately or forcing Adam into spiritual rehabilitation here on earth, God let them see the underlying reasons for their decisions, giving them the freedom to choose their own path. This dynamic between divine knowledge and human freedom is essential to understanding our place in the world. We're not puppets of fate. Rather, we are participants in a moral drama where our choices matter deeply, even if the outcome is known to God. And this brings us back to the answer to our original question. What science is profoundly useful to humanity but has no usefulness for God? The answer to this is statistics. Now let's think about this for a moment. Statistics is a tool we as limited beings rely on to make sense of uncertainty. It allows us to predict patterns, assess probabilities, manage risk, and in an unpredictable world, it gives us a glimmer of the future. We collect data, analyze trends, and try to quantify the unknown. But here's the key point: God doesn't need to run the numbers. For God, there is no probability, no uncertainty. All outcomes are known, and all variables are accounted for. Statistics is born out of human limitation. It's a brilliant system for approximating truths in a chaotic, complex world where we don't have perfect knowledge. We don't have perfect simulations. We use statistics to figure out things like disease risk factors and economic trends, or if you should bring an umbrella to work. But God, in His omniscience, has no need for such tools. For God, the future is not an unfolding series of possible events, it's a fully known reality. Forecasts allow humans to peer into the future, but only through a foggy lens. The accuracy of these forecasts depends heavily on the quality of the input data and the reliability of the statistical models we use to make sense of that data. Theoretically, if we had perfect information, we could know every variable, every factor influencing the system. And if we had flawless models to process that information, our predictions would be 100% accurate. But that's not the reality we live in. We are inherently limited by the imperfection of both our knowledge and our models. The world is far too complex, filled with uncertainties and unseen variables, for us to ever achieve perfect foresight. The best we can do is make informed guesses, leveraging the tools of science and statistics to manage uncertainty. But no matter how refined these tools become, our ability to peer into the future will always be constrained by the limitations of our models. This limitation is exemplified in what's known as the three-body problem. Netflix recently did a series titled by this expression, the three-body problem. And it shows how if you have three weights within a system orbiting around one another, that the slightest deviation is going to cause the whole thing into chaos. And it goes to show that despite all the mathematics, despite, all this computing power, something as small as trying to calculate the trajectory of the outcomes of three bodies, peering any more than just a few seconds into the future, becomes virtually impossible. The computation becomes so grandiose that trying to determine where they're going to be in X amount of time quickly diminishes where the likeliness of foretelling what the where these three bodies are going to reside and their impact on one another, anything beyond just the immediate becomes virtually impossible. Now let's tackle another facet of this. Most of these things that we're talking about were constrained by a variable known as time. And contemplate that God is outside of time, that God created time and space. And this is something that's virtually impossible for us as human beings, based on the sensory inputs we have, our brain capacity, the world we live in, to fathom what something is like outside of time and space. All our experiences, minus maybe our dreams, happen in the construct of time, where we see moment by moment being unlocked in a continuous sequence of events. And we can contemplate what's in the future and reminisce about what's in the past. But all we always have is this one cross section of time. And the crucial point to understand here is that time itself is a created entity. Just as God created the physical universe, He also brought into existence time. Therefore, He's not bound by it, He's outside of it. And that has profound implications for how we understand God's knowledge and the relationship to us in this universe. Think about it like this: if time is a linear continuum, a straight line stretching from the past through the present into the future, then we as finite beings are moving along that timeline. We only ever experience one moment or slice at a time. We can't see into the future, and we can only reflect on the past. But for God, the entire timeline is laid out before Him all at once. He sees every point in time simultaneously, past, present, and future. In other words, God's knowledge is not sequential like ours. He doesn't learn or discover new things as time progresses. He knows the entirety of time, all of human history, and every individual's life as a complete an eternal reality. And this explains why the Quran often uses the past tense when describing future events. This is seen in the context of prophecy, but even more so in the context of the Day of Judgment and the hereafter. A lot of translations, I've yet to come across one, where it doesn't translate it literally as it's written in the Arabic when it's talking about these things. So, for instance, if we read Surah 15, verse 47 in the literal Arabic, it says, "We removed all jealousy from their hearts. Like one family, they will be on adjacent furnishings." So, when it's saying the word for removed, it's saying it in the past tense, and this is in the hereafter. If we read Surah 18, verse 53, it says, "The guilty saw hell, and they realized that they will fall into it. They will have no escape therefrom." So again, it's talking about the hereafter, and it's using the past tense that they saw hell and they realized that they're going to fall into it. In the example of Surah 50, verse 21, it says, "And it came every soul with a herder and a witness." Again, in the past tense. In Surah 78, verse 19 and 20, it says, "And it opened the heaven and it became like gates. And the mountains were moved away as if they were a mirage." And there's numerous examples of this in the Quran. And it goes to show that when God is talking about these events, as far as he's concerned, he already sees them. He knows exactly what's going to play out. That's the reason I believe that it's discussing these in the past tense, because it's talking about it in God's perspective. And this is a staggering concept because it radically changes how we think about things like divine foreknowledge and free will. When we say God knows the future, we often imagine it from our limited human perspective as though God is looking forward in time and seeing what's going to happen next. But that's not quite right. God isn't foreseeing anything in the way we might guess at tomorrow's events. He's simply seeing what is. From his timeless vantage point, past, present, and future are all equally accessible to him because he's not bound by the constraints of time. So, what does this mean for us? It means that God's knowledge of our lives, our choices, our actions, our destiny is already complete from his perspective. He knows our past and future because he exists outside of the timeline we're moving through. This doesn't mean we are robots or puppets with no agency. Rather, it means that from God's position, every choice we make has already been made. He has seen it all, but we are still free to make those choices within our experience of time. We still move forward and decide. It just happens that God knows it all. The challenge here is grasping the difference between our finite experience of time and God's infinite, eternal perspective. It's impossible to comprehend fully because we are so used to thinking in terms of time. We can't escape it. Again, all our sensory inputs, all the way that we operate in this world, is in this sequential linear path of time. We can't contemplate what it's like to be able to simultaneously be outside of time, being able to view past, present, and future all in one cohesive unit. But when we begin to understand that God operates outside of the time continuum, we start to see how he knows everything, everyone's past, present, future, without violating our free will. So if God is outside of time and space, what about other entities, specifically those of the angels? If angels are outside of space, are they less constrained by time? There's a couple verses in the Quran that gives us this perspective that the angels, they don't experience time or they have a higher access to time than we do. The first one is in the first example. It's when Adam is being duped by the devil. In Surah 7, verse 20, when the devil whispers to Adam, it reads, "The devil whispered to them in order to reveal their bodies, which were invisible to them. He said, 'Your Lord did not forbid you from this tree, except to prevent you from becoming angels and from attaining eternal existence.'" So it's insinuating that the angels here have some form of eternal existence. That's at least the connection I'm making. Now, what's interesting is the word for eternal oftentimes signifies that it doesn't have a beginning. And the only way we can wrap our heads around that, again, is the possibility that the angels aren't limited to this time line like we are, that they're above the time as we experience it. That's the first example. The second one is in Surah 70, verse 4. It says that the day for the angels is equivalent to 50,000 years in our worldly perspective. Again, showing that time for the humans here on earth and the angels may not be the same. So it reads in Surah 70, verse 4, it says, the angels with their reports, the ruh, climb to him in a day that equals 50,000 years. So it's showing this time dilation between how we perceive reality and how the angels observe reality. The third example comes from Surah 18 and the history depicted between Moses and his teacher. When Moses' teacher explained why he did the three things that Moses objected to and could not comprehend, and these three things were boring the hole in the ship, killing the child, and patching the wall without asking for a wage, he informed the reasons to Moses before they parted company. And he says, regarding boring the hole in the ship, Moses' teacher indicated that he did this out of his own will because he foresaw something that would happen and wanted to make the ship defective. So in Surah 18, verse 79, it reads, as for the ship, it belonged to two fishermen, and I wanted to render it defective. There was a king coming after them who was confiscating every ship forcibly. So he's saying here, I wanted to. This was his will, the Moses' teacher will. Now, let's look at the next incident. It says, as for the boy, right, this is where the teacher informed him. It says, we feared and we willed, indicating that they foresaw something and wanted to take corrective action. Again, this shows that they had insight into the future events. So in Surah 18, verse 80 through 81, it says, as for the boy, his parents were good believers, and we feared that he was going to burden them with his transgression and disbelief. We willed that your Lord substitute in his place another son, one who is better in righteousness and kindness. So it's showing here the plural use. It's saying we. So in the first instance in the boat, it says I willed. Now it's saying we willed. Okay? So now we have the third incident. This one is when Moses and the teacher, they're asking for food and shelter from a community, and they basically are inhospitable towards them. And they see a wall that's about to collapse, and they patch the wall. And in this incident, the response from the teacher is that your Lord wanted, or your Lord willed. It reads in 1882, it says, as for the wall, it belonged to two orphan boys in the city. Under it, there was a treasure that belonged to them. Because their father was a righteous man, your Lord wanted them to grow up and attain full strength, then extract their treasure. Such is mercy from your Lord. I did none of that on my own volition. This is the explanation of the things you cannot stand. So it's showing three instances. The first one, he willed. The second one, we willed. The third one, your Lord willed. So it's saying, and then what's fascinating, it says, I did none of this of my own volition, right? Meaning that these three wills, they're aligned. And this means that the angels have certain level of discretion in their decision making, but they're using their discretion based on what they foresee. So again, it indicates that maybe they're not limited to the same time horizon as we are. Maybe they have the ability to be able to see things a little further out than we can, but to some sort of limit. In the fourth example, it shows that while the angels have insights into the future events, their knowledge of these events is limited. They're not like God. They're not in the sense where they can be outside of time and space entirely. But they have, again, a little more insight than the average human being. And this example is seen in Surah 2, verse 30, when God is telling the angels that he's placing a Khalifa, a representative on earth. And it reads in Surah 2, verse 30, it says, recall that your Lord said to the angels, I'm placing a representative, a temporary God, on earth. They said, will you place therein one who will spread evil therein and shed blood while we sing your praises, glorify you and uphold your absolute authority? He said, I know what you do not know. So in this fourth example, we see that the angels, they had some foresight, but their end prediction was not correct. They didn't know the full scope, but they clearly foresaw that, okay, God is placing this representative. This representative is going to cause bloodshed, but they didn't see the whole picture. They had a understanding of what was to come, but because they didn't have complete knowledge, they made wrong assumptions. So these four examples, again, they show that the angels, they may not be limited to the same cross section of time, that they might be able to peer more into the future on that time continuum than we are. And because of that, they're able to adjust accordingly, and they even have their own volition. And this is shown in the two instances. The first one where Moses' teacher said, I willed, and then also in the aspect that they objected to God when he said that he's placing a Khalifa on earth. This shows that the angels themselves have volition, they have discretion that they can use in their decision making. And it's not always going to be right, but they're going to, obviously do their best to be in accordance to God's will. So we can think about this world in a kind of halfway house between hell and paradise. And this radically shifts our understanding of existence. This world for the human being is a perpetual state of transition. We're constantly going from one transition to the next in cross sections of time. And we're bound by limitations of these worldly dimensions. And most notably, that is that of time. Unlike God, who sees the full expanse of eternity, or even the angels who can perceive beyond our scope, we are constrained within a linear timeline. We can't see the future in any meaningful way, only through the fog of uncertain predictions and models. The past, too, at best, is a journey of memory, fragile and subject to distortion, stored in our minds or captured imperfectly in records. Our experience of reality, then, is fundamentally shaped by this imprisonment within time. We are constantly seeking to predict, to control, to gain some sense of certainty about what lies ahead. This is why we have developed sciences like forecasting and statistics, tools that help us reduce uncertainty in a world that is at its core unpredictable. But no matter how sophisticated these tools become, we remain in the present, unable to truly step beyond the moment we are living in. The future is an abyss, a place we cannot see, no matter how much we may wish to. And this uncertainty, this inability to know what's coming, breeds anxiety, fear, and doubt. Yet, this is the purpose of divine revelation. It serves as a window into the unseen, offering us glimpses of realities beyond our immediate perception. As human beings, we are trapped in a world of material limitations constrained by time and our finite senses. We cannot see the full scope of existence, the consequences of our actions, the nature of our ultimate destination, or the spiritual realities that surround us. We are, in a sense, blind to the very things that matter most. This is where revelation steps in. It's not just a set of moral guidelines or historical narratives. It's a lifeline that allows us to peer into the unseen and gives us the tools to make decisions that are aligned with the ultimate truth. Revelation provides the framework for understanding what our limited senses cannot grasp. It tells us about the existence of the hereafter, the day of judgment, the moral and spiritual consequences of our choices. Without this divine insight, we would be left to navigate life based only on our immediate material experiences, limited to what we can observe and measure through trial and error. But revelation pulls back the veil just enough for us to see the bigger picture, to understand that our actions here and now have profound implications that extend far beyond the boundaries of this world. It gives us access to a realm of knowledge that is essential for guiding our decisions and shaping our lives in a meaningful way. Yet the importance of revelation goes beyond just providing information. It gives us the moral and spiritual compass we need to orient ourselves in a world that is often chaotic and confusing. Revelation is, in essence, a gift of foresight. It allows us to plan and make decisions, not just with the immediate moment in mind, but with eternity as our reference point. It reminds us that life is not a series of random, disconnected events, but a part of a larger divine plan. And when we make choices based on the guidance of revelation, we are aligning ourselves with that plan, preparing not just for tomorrow, but for the ultimate future that lies beyond this world. When we step into uncertainty of the future, revelation serves as our anchor. The world offers us predictions, forecasts, theories, But none of these can give us the kind of certainty that divine guidance provides. Revelation teaches us how to live in harmony with the unseen realities that govern our destiny, providing us with the knowledge we need to thrive both in this world and the next. But true success, true peace only comes when we fully submit to this guidance, when we rid ourselves of the false idols of self reliance, materialism, or blind chance. These are the very idols that have led humanity astray, causing us to lose our sight of our true purpose. Revelation calls us back to the essence of worship, submission to God alone, trusting His guidance as the only sure way to navigate both the seen and the unseen. Only by following this divine path can we be at peace with the unknown future, secure in the knowledge that we are aligning ourselves with the truth that transcends time and space. God willing, we're going to end there. If you guys want to get in contact, please join us on our Discord server. We got lively discussions, thousands of members, Sunday Quran studies. It's a great place to meet like-minded people and to worship God alone. If you want to follow along the verses of the Quran, please download the Quran Study app on the iOS App Store. If you don't have an iOS device, you can go to the QuranStudyApp.com website. And if you want more information or notes from today's discussion, you can go to QuranTalkBlog.com. You can find notes from today's discussion as far as, various articles on numerous topics. And if you want more fun kind of updates, please follow me on Twitter at TalkQuran. And until next time, peace and God bless.